Well, thank you everybody for coming. It's a special class for me. I never done that before. It's my first son that is going to join the army. So you know that there is a term in Israel, it's called Mesibat Giyus. Mesibat Giyus meaning the parties that they used to do before joining the army, before going to the army. So usually they go dancing or inviting friends or eating something, etc. So it's like an event that they're doing. So it's a kind of Mesibat Giyus, even though we don't have the groom here in the wedding, in the event, but we are celebrating that. But the question is, why would we celebrate that? What are we celebrating exactly? So I can say that when a person change stage in life, many times they are celebrating. There are even people that celebrate in the wedding sometimes. So, you can celebrate everything when you're changing something. And maybe that also, you finished high school or whatever, and then you are going to join the army. So people celebrate the change of stage in life. But here I think maybe they don't mean that, but there is something even deeper. For the same reason, maybe, that we are celebrating Bar Mitzvah. Because we could ask the same question about Bar Mitzvah. What are we celebrating? Until now, you were free. You say free as a bird. And now you have all these obligations on you. You have to make mitzvot, you have to get up to the tefillah in the morning, put tefillin, all the obligations in the Torah you suddenly have to do. And so why are you happy about that? It's hard. No, we are happy about making mitzvot, because making mitzvot help us fulfill our destiny and express our soul and the interior part in our life. And that's the reason that even though it may be hard, but we are happy for the challenges that are going to come upon us. It's something that is make us happy and with energy, and we are going to face the challenge with joy, not with sadness. And we can say the same about the joining the army, the IDF, the Jewish military, the Jewish army, that it's maybe a challenge, but it's a positive one. And I would say even that it is a mitzvah, even though not all the rabbis are going to agree with me, but I agree with me. And also many other rabbis agree with me. And I just wanted to explain a little bit about the meaning of joining the army and what mitzvah exactly are we doing. And actually, it's a very special and unique mitzvah that we have the merit that we are able to fulfill in the last generation. During many, many generations, people couldn't do this mitzvah. And now we have the merit that we can have this mitzvah. So of course, generally, we are sad that we don't, what we must have an army. It's not a happy thing. It's not a good thing that we must have an army. But in the situation, in the current world that we are living in, joining the army, it's a happy thing. That the fact that we can defend ourselves and can join the Jewish army to defend the Jewish people, it's something that we celebrate when we are doing Mesibat Giyus. And just as a comment, I would say that our grandparents in Europe would be happy to join such an army, but they didn't have one. And that's the reason that we had the Holocaust. So the opportunity to defend ourselves and to save our people, it's a very positive and happy thing. And that's the reason that generally speaking, we are happy that we have the army and we have the opportunity and the merit to join it. So this is like generally, but let's speak about specifically when we are talking about this is a mitzvah. What mitzvah is it? When someone going to the army, what mitzvah is doing? He's not doing Shabbat. It's not Shabbat. It's other mitzvah. So we have the general saying of it's a good deed. It's good, but it's not a definition of mitzvah. There are many good deeds that are not under specific mitzvah. Okay, so what mitzvah one is doing when he's joining the army? And in that depends, I will mention a little bit, but not going to delve into that, the conflict between going to yeshiva and going to, that in Israel it's a very hot topic. There are many people that don't go to the army because they say we learn Torah, which is more important. So it's a sensitive issue. I'm not going to resolve all the problems, but I want just to present some kind of what is my idea about that. So what mitzvah? Practically speaking now, what mitzvah are we doing when we are going to the army? Basically, there are three mitzvot that we can mention, specific mitzvot that we can mention as that by joining the army we are doing. The first code, לא תעמוד על דם רעך. What does it mean, לא תעמוד על דם רעך? It says when you see your fellow friend in a risk, in a danger, you must save him. So whenever you see a Jew in a risk, you must save him. So even though it's a little bit of extension of this mitzvah, it can be included into this mitzvah. Why it's extension? Because the mitzvah generally speaks about a situation when you see specific Jew in specific risk. While going to the army, you don't see a specific Jew in specific risk, but you know that if we don't have an army, then the Goyim, the Arabs that are around us are going to kill us all. So it's like a future, not so future, present, but more theoretical. It's not something that you can see in front of your eyes. I'm going to save this Jew. But again, many poskim says it's what we call kal vachomer. What is kal vachomer? Is one of the methods that we use in order to learn from the Torah. We say, if the Torah tells you that you must make an effort to save one Jew, let alone that you must make a lot of efforts to save a lot of Jews. And we know that the army is not only saving one Jew, it's saving all the Jewish people that are in the land of Israel. And also, I would say, people that are outside the land of Israel. You know that the situation of Am Israel, once we have independent country, is much better than when we had in the history when we didn't have a country. So even we live relatively safely in Canada, the fact that we know that we have a Jewish country, that in any case that, I don't know, something going to happen, we have a place to go and someone that take care of us, and someone, I would say that we saw that even in the Corona times, the COVID times, you know, that there were many Israelis all around the world, but once this is start, everybody's going to Israel because of the healthcare, because of many other things. So we know we have this home back there. So it's not only saving life of Jews who live in Eretz Israel, I think it's in some extent, it's saving the life of all the Jews around the world. The fact that we have a state, a country. And in order to have a state, you must have army. So going to the army is like the extensions of the mitzvah of lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, meaning you cannot ignore a Jew in a risk. In order to save the Jews, you know, you cannot just go to the battle. You must train. You need people in maybe in intelligence that will work in some office, and you need people that maybe tachpitaniyot, meaning those who see in the computers. You don't have to be in the first line. But all this organization, institution of having an army, taking part of that is saving Jews' life. And that can be included in the mitzvah of lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, and even a higher level. Because always when we are talking about klal, mean collective, general, mean more people, it's more important and stronger than talking about a specific person. So that, for example, is the reason that when we are talking about lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, meaning you must save your fellow Jew and that it's in risk, there is discussion in the halacha. What's happening if I'm risking myself for him? Do I have to risk myself to save his life? What if he's going to die for sure? I may be. Should I risk my life in this? So there are many discussions about when exactly I have to save the life of a Jewish fellow. But in the case of in general, meaning collective, the Jewish people in general, all these discussions disappear. We are not talking about, yeah, I have to risk my life. And I have to put everything that I can, even though I don't see that in front of my eyes right now. So because again, it's more extended because it's about the collective, that also the requirements are more extensive. For example, there was a question, interesting question that was sent to Tzitz Eliezer, Rav Eliezer Waldenberg, one of the most important poskim in the last generation. He is considered as belongs to the Haredi stream, but he's very, very close to, I don't know, he loved the land of Israel in many. So he was asking about a question in a battle that someone is in risk, is injured, for example, is wounded, and the question if I should risk myself to save him. So again, it's my life against his life. So the question was based on the famous halacha that chayecha kodmim lechaye chavercha, meaning your life as priority, precedence on the life of your friend. What does it mean? The famous story is about two people going in the desert, and they have one bottle of water that can save one life. I have the bottle and you are going with me. Do I have to give you the bottle? If I give you half, both of us are going to die. If I give you all of it, I'm going to die. If I'm going to save it to myself, you are going to die. What should I do? There are two opinions, but the halakha is like Rabbi Akiva that says, "Chayecha kodmim lechayecha vercha." You are more responsible for your own life than the life of your friend. So you don't have to give, or you don't have to give the battle to the other guy. Okay, so this is the halakha generally. So they said also this situation, he is injured, I'm saved right now. Should I risk myself to save him? And this answered that in the situation of a battle, meaning army that is in a battle, all these considerations are cancelled, because we are not talking about personal, individual situation. We are talking about the nation. In the nation or in the battle, all the concept of a battle is being together, one for all and all for one, as all these mottos are true, meaning that the situation of a battle, everybody, there's no priority to your life. You are part of Am Israel fighting for his life. And for the merit, you say, B'ezrat Hashem, Hashem will save both of them. But I mean, even if not, halachically, the criteria in personal, individual situation, and when we're talking about national, collective situation, are totally different. And all the consideration we are doing in private life are cancelled, nullified, when we are talking about nation life. And this is the reason that the mitzvah of lo ta'amod al dam re'echa is even bigger and stronger when we are talking about joining the army. Another example for that is the Shulchan Aruch, or generally the halakha. There is the definition of milchemet mitzvah. What is milchemet mitzvah? A war that is a mitzvah. And there are several definitions when it's under this definition. For example, if you live in Canada and you chose to join the army of Canada, it may be allowed, I'm not sure, but let's say it's allowed, and you can go to a war. And it's allowed because you're part of the army, you're defending your country, it's according to the law, etc. So maybe it's even a good action, but it's not milchemet mitzvah. It's not under the definition of mitzvah, of a war that is a mitzvah. So what is milchemet mitzvah? There are several definitions. One of them is what is called Ezrat Israel miyad sar, meaning helping Jews against their enemies. This is a definition of milchemet mitzvah. So I think that it's quite clear that nobody can argue that it's not milchemet mitzvah, that it's not helping Am Israel against our enemies, especially in this situation when we are living right now, but also when I was in the army. Baruch Hashem, I had the luck. I think I was in the army in the time that there wasn't any war, any active war, exactly in the same time when I joined the army. So, I mean, no operation in Gaza, no operation in Lebanon. Once I left the army, the war started again. So I think maybe I should be in the army, and then there's not going to be any war. Maybe that will be the solution. Baruch Hashem, I wasn't. It's still the mitzvah of Ezrat Israel miyad sar. I mean, it's still considered as milchemet mitzvah, because you know that without the fact that we have an army, for sure it's going to be a war. So the fact that we have an army, this itself preventing the war, and this itself, it's going to be considered as milchemet mitzvah, meaning the definition of Ezrat Israel miyad sar. So this is the first mitzvah, which is quite clear. The second mitzvah that you are doing when you are joining the army is what we call mitzvah Yeshuv Eretz Israel. The mitzvah of living in Eretz Israel, or dwelling in Eretz Israel, I don't know, taking the land of Israel to the Jewish people. I want to explain a little bit more about this mitzvah. So it's said clearly in the mitzvah, "V'orashtem ota v'yishavtem ba." There is a mitzvah that Kadosh Baruch Hu orders us, you should conquer the land of Israel and sit in it. That's what the verse says, "V'orashtem ota v'yishavtem ba." So there is an opinion that according to, so Rambam, when he counted the mitzvot in Sefer HaMitzvot, he didn't mention this mitzvah. He didn't count it as one of the mitzvot. So one says that this mitzvah doesn't exist today. Today we are in the diaspora, we are in the galut as a punishment for our sins, and that's the reason that today we don't have the obligation to live in Eretz Israel or to have Eretz Israel. But first of all, it's maybe the Rambam didn't write that, and there are many excuses why. Not necessarily he thinks there isn't mitzvah. We can see in other places in the Rambam that he thinks that there is a mitzvah also today, live in Eretz Israel. How do we see that? For example, there is a halakha that if there is a discussion between the husband and the wife wants to make aliyah and the husband doesn't, or the opposite, right? So you know that there is a ketubah. So they decided to separate for that, as בשלום, to make a divorce, because it was so important to one of the sides, that you know that the one who is guilty for the divorce is the one who's paying, according to the הלכה. I'm not into the details, but so there is a ketuvah. If it's the fault of the husband, he should pay the ketuvah. If it's the fault of the wife, he doesn't have to pay the ketuvah. So the halacha say that the one who want to go to Eretz Israel is winning. If it is the husband, he doesn't have to pay the ketuvah. If it's the wife, she can take the ketuvah. What can we see from that? That also, we write that for today, not for the old times, right? So we can see that according to Rambam, we have this mitzvah also today, because if not, we don't have this. And there are other proofs that Rambam does things that there is mitzvah also today. But apart from Rambam, we have Ramban. And Ramban made a list of the mitzvot that Rambam didn't mention. And the fourth one is this. He says we have mitzvah that Rambam didn't mention, to live in Eretz Israel. And not only to live in Eretz Israel, also to govern Eretz Israel, meaning to have this country out under our governance, as you say, under our hands. So in order to make this mitzvah, of course, you need to take it from those who are not Jews, if they are living there or controlling this zone, etc. So it's quite clear that according to Rambam, we have the mitzvah of taking Eretz Israel. And this is clearly can be made only by having an army, right? We cannot have Eretz Israel for the Jews without having an army. And this is also the definition of Milchemet Mitzvah. As we said before, there are several definitions of Milchemet Mitzvah. What is exactly the definition of Milchemet Mitzvah? One of them is helping Israel against their enemies. The second is the war on Eretz Israel. To take Eretz Israel from the enemies is Milchemet Mitzvah, or to keep controlling it, keep having Eretz Israel under the government of the Jews. It's a mitzvah of Eretz Israel, of Yeshuv Eretz Israel. So according to that, also this is another mitzvah. I think also according to Rambam, but for sure according to Ramban, we are making this mitzvah. And there is some midrashim that say it's not just a regular mitzvah. And again, I'm returning to the topic that I said before. When you're talking about national level, about collective against individual, it's much higher level. It's not the same by any means. And that's the reason there is midrash that says, Kula Eretz Israel, Yeshivat Eretz Israel, keneged kol mitzvot shebatorah, meaning the mitzvah of having Eretz Israel is compared to all the mitzvot in the Torah, is the same weight. So there are several mitzvot that it says the same. So if you are mathematician, it will be hard to calculate. If everything is against if there are four that are against everything, but it's concluded that, you know, someone is saying it's hard to calculate that. But it's a saying. It's saying that it's, by the way, some say that's the reason that Rambam didn't mention it, because Rambam didn't mention mitzvot that are against all the mitzvot, that are compared to all the mitzvot. So that's the reason the Rambam didn't mention it as one of the mitzvot. So it's mentioned as one of the mitzvot that are compared to all the mitzvot of the Torah. So you understand again that it's not only, well, like I'm putting tefillin, which is important mitzvah, or when I'm lighting the candles for Shabbat, it's important mitzvah. It's a higher level. It's a level in mitzvah, in the level of all Am Israel, of all the nation, the Jewish nation, and this is why it's so important. I just, again, without getting into very deep to this topic, I would say that there are some that their opinion is that if you are learning Torah, you don't have to do army. You don't have to go to the army. It's a problematic view for the reason, first of all, generally speaking about mitzvah Torah compared to other mitzvot, we know that כל מצווה שאינה יכולה לעשות על ידי אחרים, יש מבטלים תורה. Meaning, if there's a mitzvah that cannot be done by others, you must stop learning and do this mitzvah. For example, nobody can put tefillin for you. So you must put tefillin. You don't say, I learn in Torah, I don't want to waste my time on putting tefillin. No, this is a mitzvah that cannot be done by other people. So you must leave the learning and do this mitzvah. And there are other cases. For example, when there is a levaya and nobody can do the levaya, it's a mitzvah to bury a Jew. So you must leave learning Torah and go to the levaya, even if there's not enough people. So, and there are very many other examples that if there isn't other person. So the question is, what does it mean we don't have other people? So there are people that go to the army, but if everybody will say that, nobody will go to the army. So how can we calculate that? You cannot say other people will do that, because you are the other people. I mean, we don't have other people. We have only us. only the Jewish people can do that. So you cannot say, my Torah is more important than your army. So you don't have to do that. So this is, again, it's something that can be discussed. And but generally speaking, I don't think that learning Torah is an excuse not to go to the army. I can say that you can say that for certain cases, it's important enough, because if you really want big rabbis, important rabbis, they really have to dedicate many years to learn Torah and to be wise enough and to know enough to be important rabbi. Not, again, you can be rabbi without learning so many years of Torah. You can see myself, right? You don't have to learn 40 years Torah, but there are certain levels of rabbis that really do have to dedicate a lot of time, and we don't know who's going to be, who is talented enough. So I can understand. We can say also, we can see that in much less important courses. For example, in Israel, there is a program when someone is a very good in sport, he get exemptions from the obligation to serve, right? So if you're very good in basketball, you don't have to go to the army. So this is okay, but if you're very good in Torah, you must go to the army. So we understand that the decision of who is exempted is not, and there are other cases that people get from some reason, for many reasons, exemption. So we understand that it's possible to say, yeah, we don't need that everybody will go to the army. We need most of the people, we need the big majority of the people go to learn Torah. But we don't must everybody in the Torah. So I can understand that there should be certain number of Bachurei Yeshivot that will get the exemptions of learning Torah. Yeah, not go to the army, learn the Torah. But I think that it should be two conditions. First condition, not condition, but I mean, I would expect these people to at least recognize that those who are going to the army are doing a very important mitzvah. It's not like, well, the Chilonim doing the work for us. Or those who go to the Torah are not really religious or not really serious about the religion, because the real religious people are not going to the army. No. The real religious people are going to the army because it's a mitzvah, it's an important mitzvah. So you must recognize that and say, well, they are more tzaddikim than me, they are risking their lives, they're making a big mitzvah. I must learn Torah right now because we need big rabbis in the future, and maybe able to do this function for Am Israel, and so I'm giving up this opportunity to make this big mitzvah, and I'm learning Torah. That's okay, but you do not underestimate. You cannot underestimate this important and big mitzvah of going to the army. This is one condition. The second condition is that it will be truly the best. What's happening right now is that there are, like the old population, if you was born in certain family, you are exempted. Many of them are not really learning. Many of them are learning Torah very seriously, but many not. So you cannot say all this stream is exempted and all these people should go to the army. It should be on individual base, right? So if a person is really talented, really dedicated, really dedicate all these efforts to learn, I can understand that there is some certain number of people that will be exempted from this important mitzvah, because still we can manage. We have enough people if we have, but tens of thousands of people that will be exempted because they belong in certain society, that is a very problematic point. Anyway, this is a little bit of politics about what's going on in Israel, but it's not the main. It's not the main subject. Just to, and I understand that there are other opinions. I'm not saying that necessarily I'm right and they are wrong, but I have the right to present my opinion. So this is my opinion about that. Returning to the topic, just to summarize what we said until now, by going to the army, you are making at least two mitzvot. I would mention another one that Rav Aviner wrote. So these two mitzvot that I said are basically agreed by most of the rabbis that I know. So the first mitzvah is Ezrat Yisrael miyad tzar, lo tamod al dam re'echa, saving Jews' lives. This is the first mitzvah. And the second mitzvah is Yeshuv Eretz Yisrael, meaning having Eretz Yisrael in the hands of the Jews. It's also a mitzvah that you made by going to the army. So these are the two mitzvot deoraita, from the most important mitzvot of the Torah, that you are making by going to the army. The third mitzvah mentioned by Rav Aviner, that I also agree with that, it's called Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying the name of the Lord, which means that it says in the Gemara someplace that the most severe Chilul Hashem is the opposite of sanctify the name, profane the name of God. So profaning the name of God, the biggest profanation of the name of God is the galut, the diaspora. When the Jews are humiliated and they are the weakest and everybody can torture them and do whatever they want with us. So once we don't have independence and power, this is Chilul Hashem. So they say the Jews are the abandoned nation and etc. etc. So when we do have the power, when we do have, even though sometimes we get hit and you know that it's sometimes very hard, but we still have the power to return and to rebuild ourselves and show our power. And really, I think that you can see that God is with us, even though sometimes we have some heat in the way. So this is Kiddush Hashem. The fact that the Jews are not hated by everybody that want to hit us, that the Jews can defend themselves, that they have the power, that they have the pride and the independence, this is Kiddush Hashem. And this Kiddush Hashem can be made by having a country, independent state, and this can only be maintained by having a strong army. So when you are joining the army, you are participating in the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, and again, it's one of the most important mitzvot that we have in the Torah. So 3 of the most important mitzvot that we have in the Torah can be fulfilled by joining the army. So this is about the mitzvot. I want to add another point. So this is important mitzvah, but it's also a mitzvah that can hurt you. I'm not talking about physically hurt you, that also can be happen, but also mentally. You know that being in an army many times can affect the character. You have to develop some kind of cruelty, and you have to do sometimes very strong actions. For example, there was a question, you know that Kohen that killed someone for some reason, even if it was by mistake, he cannot do Birkat Kohanim. He cannot bless the people, because these hands that shed blood cannot bless. And so there is a question if he killed someone who's not Jew. There are questions about that. And so the question rises, if someone that killed in a war, if a Kohen that joins the army and killed someone by the war, if he can still bless the people. So this question didn't start with the state of Israel, it was before that. And before that, it wasn't like a very decisive answer, because in the past, Jews could be in both sides. You know that there are stories basically about the First World War of Jews, that you know that it was a very close war. Most of the war was like in distance of few meters. And there were stories about Jews that were participating in one side and shoot, and heard in the other side someone yelling Shema Israel because he heard a Jew in the other side. It was before he died, he said Shema Israel. So there were stories like that, horrible stories. So they said, you don't know who is in the other side. You killed people, maybe he was a Jew. So there's a question if you can do or not. In the case of the state of Israel, you can assume that most of the Arabs that attacking Jews are not Jews. So it's not a question here about that. But they still asked Rav Ovadia Yosef about that. If a Kohen that killed someone in a battle, if he can still bless, making the blessing of the Kohanim. And he said for sure that he can, because it is a milchemet mitzvah. Because we are doing the mitzvah of protecting Jews, saving Jews' life. So for sure, there's no question about that it's not only that you can bless, your blessing is stronger. You have the merit of saving Jews, so your blessing is even stronger. So it's not a question that, again, it's a mitzvah, but still, you cannot say that it doesn't affect the soul. And it's make you maybe less sensitive. And there is a term in Israel that say a kibush mashchit. The fact that we control other people, it some way harm our character. We become unhuman or something like that. So the question if it's really like that. I just mentioned Sinai for a second. Those of you who knew him, that he came here several times, you know that he is a very, very gentle person, very kind, always smiling, always kind to other people. So how can you take this person that is so kind and gentle and tell him, now you have to kill someone. Now you have to shoot on person, right? It may affect him. Maybe it would be בשלום less gentle, less nice. I don't know. And I think that we can see it's not happening. Even though people are speaking bad about us, it's just lies. The Jewish soldiers, the soldiers of our army are the most moral, gentle, kind, loving people. Yeah, some people can be affected, and there are post-trauma, and there are people that are affected also mentally. But generally speaking, we are, I think, the most moral army in the world without a question. I will give you just one example. I think, even though there again lies against about that, there's no one case of sexual abuse in the last war. We have a war of 1 year and a half. I don't think one case of sexual abuse in the places when the soldiers go. And it's unusual in every war, always in war, people, I don't know, letting go all their desires and all their evil and wickedness. And I'm talking about all the armies, also those of the Occidental countries, in United States, Canada, all these countries. When you are in the field of battle, all the aggressions are going out from you, all the emotions and the stress, and people just losing control on their morality, and they're doing horrible, horrible things. We know stories about Vietnam, about Second World War, First World War, all the only army that is not doing that is the Jewish army. I mean, we have this merit of the mitzvah that protecting us from this influence. And again, you're gonna hear in the media a lot of lies, but they are lying so hardly because they cannot deal with the situation, with the fact that the Jews are different. You know, there was a research that was published, it was made a lot of noise, that the Jews soldiers do not rape the enemy because they're racist. No, they run to this excuse. We don't do that because we are racist, so we don't want to rape Arab people. It's doesn't make any sense, and it's of course bullish, and you say stupid explanation. And the fact is, no, because the mitzvah of defending Jews, defending the land of Israel, and saving life, is defending us also from the influence that may have this situation of a war. And again, I'm not talking about very individuals, specific cases, very, very rare. I mean, you can compare to any kind of any other army in the world, and it's not even close. It's not even close. And people, again, in situations when they are in a civil population for so many months, and they have the power, and they have the guns, and they can do whatever they want, and they don't. Why? Because they are moral. And it's something that you cannot see in any other army. I want to read about that. A paragraph that Rav Kook wrote. So Rav Kook, as you know, lived before the state of Israel, before there was a Jewish army. But he wrote some paragraphs in the time of the First World War, which was a real bloodshed without any reason, just to kill people, and people, tens of millions of people. Nobody understood really what was the war about. It was something so strange, and all this aggression. So in this time, when this phenomenon was in the world, it tried to analyze what is the meaning of war, and what is the meaning of armies, and all this. So there are very interesting paragraphs there, but he also spoke about Jews, about our history. So he said, when we look on the first generation that we read about in the Torah, in the Nevi'im, in the Ketuvim, we see that this generation, I'm not translating word for word, but generally the idea. All of them were also making wars. For example, Yoshua, Moshe Rabbeinu did the war of the other side of the Yarden, of Melchei Amori, the kings of the Amori. David HaMelech, that wrote Tehillim, also had a lot of wars. I think the only one who didn't have wars was Shlomo HaMelech. And all the great people, Avraham Avinu, we know that he has a word of the 4 kings, etc. So we have many great people. It says that we are looking on them with admiration, and they were busy with the war. And again, it's like kind of a question. So you say that he was a very elevated person, great person with a spiritual connection with God, and how can he kill people? How can he be so cruel and participate in something so dirty as a war? It's like a contradiction. He was such a great person, or he was a killer? How do we understand this contradiction? So he said again, I skip a little bit. It says that the necessity of the nation cause to these great souls to appear, that their interior feeling was so complete that they recognize that when they are making a war, it's not something that its purpose is to achieve power or to use their desires or whatever. It's the war of God in order to defend his people. And this made this same action that in other cases would influence you for the worse, this same action make you better, make you more gentle. So I say, מלחמת קיומם, the war of their existence, קיום האומה, the existence of the nation, מלחמת השם הייתה בהכרה הפנימית. It was a war of God in their interior recognition. They were strong in their soul, spirit, and they knew that in the deepness of the darkness, they can choose the good and go away from the bad. And then it mentions the famous verse that we say in Tehillim, in סעודה שלישית, גם כי ילך בגיא צל מוות, לא יירא רע. What is the meaning of this verse? Usually we understand, even when I go in a dark place, I'm not afraid because Hashem is keeping me, right? לא יירא כי אתה עמדי. But he understands what is גיא צל מוות. Guy, it's valley, right? It's a lower place. Tzal Mavet, in the shadow of death. What is the valley of the shadow of death? We can understand also the battle. So also when I'm in the battle or in this kind of situation, I'm not worried because Hashem is with me. What should I be worried about? Maybe get hurt, but maybe more than that I got hurt spiritually. So even when I'm in these dark places, when people do so many bad things and I see death in front of my eyes and I see violence in front of me, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about losing my soul, my spirit, my morality, because I know that Hashem is with me. When I'm doing this war for Hashem, for Am Israel, I know that I'm protected from this bad influence of the war. And he said, Rav Kook, he said after that these great souls that were in Am Israel in the past, David HaMelech, that was writing this incredible book of Tehillim and did so many wars. So he had these two things inside himself without hurting each other. The Gemara says that it's called Adino Ha'etzni, that he was very gentle when he was learning Torah and very tough when he was doing the war. And this didn't conflict. So he says these great souls returned to live among us. So he wrote that before the Second World War, and I know like I said, in the First World War, he said we start seeing these people returning to live among us, and I think that today we can see that very clearly. I mean, really, we hear stories about the soldiers, about things that's happening today. There's these great people, amazing people, and you can see how the war doesn't corrupt them, doesn't destroys the morality, the behavior. And again, the soldiers, our soldiers, the soldiers of the IDF, of the Jewish army, are really good people. It doesn't affect them. All the situation doesn't make them negative, cruel, etc. So this is a great blessing. And B'ezrat Hashem, I really hope, returning to our son, Sinai, we are all here blessing him to have easy service and that he won't have to do anything, something like that the war will be over and he will just use this time to challenge himself, get a lot of achievements, get to know new friends for all the life, that you have in the army, friends for the whole life. And B'ezrat Hashem, all the war will be over and we'll see the Mashiach soon in our days. Okay. B'ezrat Hashem. So